So, in general, kind of...
You're an animal.
I'm not an animal. I was trying to format some on the phone and did some on the Mac. Like, the phone is just horrible with notes trying to do anything. But for some reason or another, recently, I've had a lot of just random, like, squirrel kind of thoughts around this whole manliness thing, starting with the stuff that we talked about last week. So it is something that I want to explore in some fashion, but I don't really know how yet. There's an itch there that needs to be scratched.
Well, shall we? Oh my God. Okay. So this is a different guy.
What, the Cawthorn one?
I clicked on the wrong link.
Yeah, so
I've never heard of this actor.
I hadn't either. Are you just unfamiliar with the levels of bullets and indentation?
No, sir. No, sir, that is not it. But I do like that you... Oh, shit.
It's kind of fun watching them change in real time.
I don't normally even have this much problem. See, that's what I need right there.
Oh, yeah. I didn't do that because I was doing that on the phone, and there's
I figured as much because I can't do it on the phone. But see, I always I think about it. I was like, now I got to go to my Mac and I got to do this right here.
I don't understand why you can't do that on the phone. That irks me.
Yeah, how do we do Command K on the phone? Give me a way to do Command K on the phone.
I shouldn't have to. I should be able to press and select and then press and hold and insert hyperlink.
That's what I mean. Like there should be some equivalent to Command K. Oh, shoot. I did it wrong. You see what I did wrong?
I do. That's all right.
Fixing it. I didn't realize you had... There we go. Woohoo!
Well, now you just removed the link completely.
No, the link...
Oh, no. Okay, it took a second to refresh. Sorry.
Oh, okay. See, I would be awesome maintaining a wiki as long as nobody else touches it or they all follow all of my rules. Speaking of people that are inflexible... See, I just read hold other men, and then I saw and themselves accountable. It's fun just to read. Real men hold other men. Just stop right there.
And see, this is part of why, like, there's something to this topic that I want to explore, because there are so many things that I just completely toss out with what people think masculine, being a man means, or masculinity in general. Because it's bullshit. Like, hell yeah, I cry, and I have emotions and everything else. But that doesn't mean that I can't bench press X amount either, if that's your measure of a man. And I think
it's not.
It shouldn't be, but there are people that,
they do.
Which is why, like, this feels like something that could legitimately be kind of a purpose-driven exploration. But I don't know that I have that much to say about it because of how absurd the arguments are. You know what I mean?
Well, we could have a meandering conversation about this. At some point, the show started, and I think this is part of it, because I feel like we could have a pretty good conversation about it.
I think even if it just starts right there, it's a good way to explain where the thought process comes from. Because last time I checked, I meet every definition of what being a man is from a biological sense. And
well, I think the idea of being a man is actually part of the problem. Like, I thought about, I don't need to be a man about this. Like, I need to be an adult about this. I need to be a responsible person about this. I need to be a good citizen in this regard. And it has nothing to do with my genitalia.
You know, I like when we manage to have this proper kind of exchange of thought without even talking about it first.
Yeah.
Because it's exactly where I wanted to go with it. Like, it's one of those things where we focus so much on portions of our identity that don't make sense for what we're wanting to relate them to. And I kind of, without trying to bring labeling into every discussion like this, I kind of attribute it in part to that because it makes sense, right? We have sets of behaviors that are modeled that we try to figure out what describes them or what they fit into to understand them. And it's not intentionally trying to label them with what it means to be manly or feminine or whatever it may be. It's just that they get grouped into these categories over time based on interactions with other people. And so trying to take a step back from that and recognize that we need to start out with the goal of being human. I mean, that's something we have in common with everyone else to the best of our knowledge. Just to add the disclaimer, just in case. And what it means to possess humanity, and then what additional layers reside on top of that.
So I chose things like adult and grown up because women are also adults and grown-ups, and they can be held to the same standard, or I can hold myself to the same standard as cis women, trans men, trans women, whatever way you want to identify yourself, whatever label fits who you feel like inside or closest to that. And I think it's important to make ourselves equal with one another, because the idea of like manly men do this is, I think, part of toxic masculinity. A movie that kind of had a strong impact on me, or at least changed my language, that fit in this same idea, was the movie True Grit. I love that movie with Jeff Bridges, the Coen Brothers movie.
Yeah.
I know you've seen it, but if any listener hasn't seen it, I recommend 2010, Jeff Bridges, Matt Damon, Josh Brolin, Coen Brothers, True Grit, remake of, it's a remake.
Yeah, but that's the only thing I was going to add, was that it was a remake.
Yeah. Through the whole movie, it's like, it's not Rooster Cogburn that has, I mean, he is a gritty character, but I love, it's like all these men who were in their own right strong male figures in 19th century United States. And you got this little girl, teenage girl, adolescent woman. She's the one with true grit. And the idea was just like, oh, that's really, I just love that. And I'm sorry I spoiled the movie.
That's all right. I can inject a spoiler warning.
Yeah, it's been 12 years. If you haven't seen it, I'm sorry. But, but yeah, I saw that, and it's like, it's like one of those moments. I remember when I watched it, it was one of those moments like, that's what they did. That's, I see what you did there, Coen Brothers, and whoever actually originally did the movie. But I changed my language where it's like that was, that person has grit. I like that. It was a good asexual way to describe any person who is a badass.
So I agree. I don't want to seem like I'm diverging from that conversation. I just want to add something that's interesting to think about. Part of what I found intriguing about engaging in the study of jiu-jitsu was that on the mats you're equal. Doesn't matter male, female, young, old. Completely does not matter.
You earn a rank.
Right. And it's been refreshing to be in a group where there's no distinction. I mean, you've got, at the gym that I go to, we've got ranging from a 73-year-old grandma out there on the mats with us to 18-year-old kids just out of school. And the only reason I would say 18 is because there is a separation between like kids to this intermediary to adult classes. So I know that there's a cutoff. I'm going to make the assumption it's 18. I haven't investigated it because it didn't matter to me.
Seems right.
But you've got this huge range of people, and we're out there doing the same thing, and helping each other get better at doing these things, affectionately referred to as folding clothes while people are still in them. And it's I think part of why this has become such an interesting topic for me recently is because of that as well. Because it's firsthand experience in an arena where all of these things just kind of go out the window. It's an intentional treatment of equality on the mat. And it's good. Everybody is better for it. And it's the kind of thing that brings me back to what is it societally or culturally that we can start to pinpoint and change that gets us to that same level of not even inclusiveness, because there are always going to be people who have misguided views of others for whatever reason, but that level of ideal that we aim for as opposed to where we are now, because where we are now feels very much like a continuation of putting people in these different groups or trying to make these different groups fit definitions that shouldn't exist.
Yeah, I think the first thing is recognizing that I think the first thing is just like being in a place where it's like being a man versus being a woman or any other label we choose is irrelevant to the concept. Like it's hard. Like I'm getting to a place where it's like, now I want to say there's this concept of being a man, but what is the right way of saying that? Because by saying being a man, then I'm thinking along the lines of I'm getting into a place where I don't want the sex to be relevant.
Well, I think there's a starting place that you have to acknowledge first, and I referenced it earlier about human, but we've talked about it extensively. There's a concept of being a decent person, right? That's the starting block. You can have traits that take you in different directions layered on top of that starting block. And those traits tend to make you more aggressive or passive or calm or exuberant. Like there are all of these different things that are wrapped up in how we present ourselves, how we carry ourselves, how we behave, that are legitimate descriptors. They may not be positive traits, but they're still legitimate descriptors. For example, I would not want to be known as an aggressive person.
Right.
I have no problems being known as a confident person. And that's not necessarily that different from being aggressive, depending on how you view or define that for yourself either. The difference is in what I am attempting to convey and be overall, as opposed to how I act upon those guiding principles kind of thing. So I could be inadvertently aggressive because of my confidence for someone who is very timid. Or I could be just confident for someone who is, we'll just say equally confident. Someone who would be more or less the same general persona. Recognizing that continuum and understanding how these same things can be interpreted in different ways based on experiences and proclivity to certain personality traits in general, that's the foundational piece that we have to start with that is so difficult to understand, other than the core, everyone should have the foundation of being a decent person. So that doesn't really help, does it? Like I'm seeing it in my mind of kind of like the Maslow hierarchy of needs. The very bottom base foundational piece, decent human being. And even that is somewhat subjective, but decent human being what the guiding attempt for the foundation would be. And then in these next like 2 or 3 layers, being a combination of those behaviors and personality traits and ideals that you attempt to ascribe to with the final top area being the recognition that just because your self-view is this, it doesn't mean every other person will interpret you in the same way, and being able to empathize with those differences in views and adjust accordingly being kind of the ideal you strive for. Does that make sense at all?
It does. It does.
And it's so difficult to convey because none of it has anything to do with masculinity, femininity. That's such a difficult word to say.
Feminine, yeah. C and enemy is easier.
Yes. But all of the traditional labels we used have no bearing on that concept. And that's what makes it so difficult to illustrate in any way that makes sense, I think. Or that universally makes sense.
Mm-hmm. So I like where the contrasting terms, or not contrast, they're not really contrasting so much as they are different terms for a particular idea that have, I think, positive and negative connotations, where you have tough as opposed to gruff and brave as opposed to macho, where I think the first two in the respective pairs is a positive trait of any adult, and the second two of the pairs is a negative trait that is typically associated with masculinity.
Yeah, it's and I don't even know that those are the best examples. They just kind of were the ones that illustrated
popped in your head
the thought process behind like dainty versus graceful, maybe being one as well. You think about a martial artist being graceful or a dancer being graceful, but you have two very different pictures of what that should mean from the activity they're doing, and that should not actually have the bearing on anything. And so I was thinking the same kind of thing with tough and gruff.
Right.
We have, you would expect someone who is a lumberjack to be somewhat gruff, right? Like there's a certain amount of not caring about other people's opinions, etc. But you could also expect them to be tough and view them in a positive manner. It's the same behaviors. It's just how you describe it changes how the behavior is interpreted.
I think what I thought was interesting was that it seems like relatively easy to take the labels tough and brave and apply them to women and children as well, whereas I feel like it would be relatively uncommon to use gruff or macho as descriptors for women and children.
Interesting point. I actually had not thought about it from that angle, but I agree, with the potential exception of, which actually this just kind of reaffirms the point, the potential exception of how older adults might describe young boys, and specifically boys.
Mm-hmm.
Which, again, just goes to reinforce the idea of it being really an improper masculine descriptor.
Yeah. I think there's also this idea that boys are allowed to be... There's a point where, boys are allowed to have... basically not be manly, and to a point. And usually, one of the term that came to mind at a certain age, and it's a relatively young age, and I think if you have a bigger boy, like a husky boy, it's even younger for them. But there's a point where if a boy is showing emotions, he gets called a mama's boy.
Yeah, that's pretty common.
And I think that teaches boys to be unemotional, or to bottle their emotions and hide them and not deal with them. And I feel like that is the opposite of being a man.
Well, it's the opposite of how men should be, for sure.
It is it is the opposite of how men should be, because it does not allow it makes it more difficult to be a decent human being when you can't deal with your own emotions.
And let's emphasize this slightly further too. The prevalence of depression and suicide among men is horrific in general, right? Men do not generally have established support structures to help them deal with episodes of depression and the downward spiral into suicidal tendencies. This has been repeatedly studied and discussed. I might even take the time to find links if I need to, but this is not uncommon knowledge. We'll put it that way. And this stems from the general combination of either being taught to mask emotion or hide emotion, such as the concept of where you're referring to like a mama's boy and not wanting to be referred to that way, and so continuing to bottle it up and not address the issue itself. Or often you'll hear the other term or phrase being man up, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that has come to my head a couple of times in this conversation.
And it's such I hate it with such a passion.
Yeah.
And
grow a pair.
Yeah. These types of concepts should not exist, period.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care what era we're in. You should be able to identify emotional distress and deal with it appropriately. And you should be able to exhibit behaviors that identify dealing with emotional distress and not knowing how to resolve it. That's just the point of that's part of being human.
Yes, and to be healthy, there's an appropriate way to deal with those things. Yes. Yeah, I kept thinking of the phrase "man up," and I also, it sort of goes along with grow a pair. And here's where we're going to get our E, but I'm like, it's the dumbest thing because it doesn't even make sense, because it's like on the man's body, like that is, everybody knows if you want to like incapacitate a man for a few minutes, kick him in the nads. And on the other hand, the pussy is probably one of the most astounding organs in the human body, at least the female human body, because it can expand. It's designed to expand so rapidly and accommodate the birth of a human. And then it goes right back down to its size. And on the other hand, if you just, if we want to be crass here, it takes a pounding and just is like ready to go again. And it's just like the opposite of balls. I don't know if you want to like.
No, I'm certainly
pause in here and take it out, but
no, it helps to illustrate the point. And it may not be a perfect analogy, but it is.
It just makes no fucking sense.
Well, and if we want to go ahead and compound it further, like there's a reason that these stereotypical memes are that if men had to give birth, there just would no longer be children.
Right.
I mean, there's no way in hell I want to deal with the ramifications of childbirth.
This is totally anecdotal, but I remember seeing a TikTok where man was transitioning from woman to man and had been taking testosterone. I think I've mentioned this before, but they remarked that they did not realize how their tolerance for pain would go away. They said, I now no longer have a tolerance for pain like I did before getting on testosterone. And so there was some... I'm curious if there's any studies out there that shows the correlation of tolerance for pain linked with having less testosterone versus, a man's body's level of testosterone. I thought it was interesting.
Yeah, there might be. It's the kind of thing that I think is so highly individualistic, though.
Sure. That's why, totally anecdotal.
And, I mean, even in men, you have some who... you feel like they would scream bloody murder at a paper cut, right? And then you have some who they don't even realize their arm's broken until a doctor tells them.
That's true. That's true. It's a huge variability.
And I'm going to bring jiu-jitsu back into it.
You mean folding clothes with the person in it?
Murder yoga, in other words. It was funny. I think I mentioned it on the show. I may not have, that I competed. Doesn't matter about that piece of it, but multiple individuals from our gym competed. There was one guy who actually had his jaw dislocated and honestly did not know it until he went to the doctor.
Wow.
Like, it was one of those things where he felt like it was uncomfortable, but it felt like it was just kind of bruised type thing. Mm-hmm. And, I mentioned the 73-year-old. Like, in training, she had the skin on her elbow ripped open. And this is just the frailty of being an older individual and the thin skin. Like, it was not anything malicious. She didn't even realize it until she noticed blood. And like, it's the kind of thing that it just helps illustrate that pain tolerance is very different from one individual to another anyway. Mm-hmm. I don't know that any study has found that there's any one specific thing that correlates to increased or decreased pain tolerance because of how individualistic it is.
Yeah, and there's even like different sorts of pains, because it's like, I think about the guy who, I don't want to pick the guy who got his jaw dislocated, but it's like some guy who dislocated something or, injured himself and didn't quite realize it because, they're a relatively tough person, and that's not how, they are able to respond to the pain in a different way than maybe somebody else. But how that same person might be like the biggest baby when it comes to like having a cold or something like that.
Oh, absolutely.
So there's different types of levels. I just remember one time, I will say that I remember hearing wives complain about when their husbands get sick and how they're biggest babies. And it made me just be like, all right, I'm gonna, when I get sick, like, nobody's going to know. Like, I'm not going to say anything, and like, I'm going to hide it, and I'm not going to be a big baby. And then there's like the problem of like, if you're sick, you need to get away from people.
Yeah. It's a funny thing in general. Along the same lines, not exactly the same, but very similar. I think we've joked about it before too. Like, go to a doctor and ask about pain, and you say, "Oh, just the normal amount," kind of thing, right? And the response
that's zero.
Should be, "Well, there shouldn't be any. Right. There should be no pain." But there's also the aspect of, depending on how well you have taken care of your body or how you are genetically predisposed to certain ailments, there are a number of things that can influence pain tolerance as well. And like, for me, just anecdotally, I always have some amount of lower back pain. It just, because of issues developmentally with some curvature and some twisting, it's just, I will always have back pain. It doesn't matter. I always have, always will. I don't notice it at this point because it's just like in the background. It's part of existence, right? But I'm over 40. I wake up in the morning and like things pop, and if I slept wrong, I'm going to hurt for a week and a half. And I'm going to grumble about it and complain, and it's probably nowhere near the amount of pain that my back is truly in comparison. It's just different. It's something that I don't constantly experience. Right. And there's that level of repeat exposure to something that also influences our interpretation of it. And so it's an area that seems like it would be fascinating, but because of the number of variables we've identified without even trying, at this point, I'm not so sure you could pinpoint like any correlation to increase or decrease in testosterone, because I'm not sure you could remove enough of the variability of other possible contraindicators.
You'd need like a significant study with lots of data points to actually make not even like a determination, but just to have something better than a wet finger in the air.
Yeah, I think your sample size would have to be pretty significant. I think that's what it comes down to.
They always want you to have more than an N of 1.
Maybe a little more than 10.
I mean, it's yeah. And reviewer number 2 is always going to be the one that points that out. Anyway,
we've digressed at this point.
I know. I was trying to get us back on track, and then I was like, I don't know what track we're going to get back on.
Well, overall, this would not be necessarily getting us back on track. This is just taking the same conversation that we've had and saying one other thing to add to all of this that I just completely found hilarious and horrifically misguided. I'll include a link to an article talking about Senator Crowley. Let me pull up his name real quick so I know for sure. Cawthorn. I was way off.
Madison Cawthorn?
Yeah. So Cawthorn is a Republican who lost re-election, has been known for being fairly extremist. So it comes as no surprise that he would lash out about anything, and it kind of to the far. We're using right for this or left? Far right, yeah. I get confused on extremes. There was a.
I don't know how a direction became.
I don't either. That's why I get confused by it. And I'll tell you real quick.
Well, I've been using your terms, progressive and regressive.
Well, so how I remember how the general reference is, if you lean liberal, you lean left. That's the only way I remember it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have
it's
to. It's a pretty
good mnemonic device.
Yeah, I have to think through kind of what it's supposed to be, and then I'm supposed to be talking about the people on the right.
Yeah, well, you could go right for regressive.
You could. That's a good way to think of it. Yeah, I like that. But this article caught my attention because the speech is so ridiculous that I wanted to mention it in the wake of what we talked about last week.
Mm-hmm.
So Madison Cawthorn, quote unquote, tells Americans to be more manly in his farewell address. And here's the quote that I wanted to specifically call out because it's a perfect embodiment of everything that is wrong with people trying to talk about men. Quote, "Our young men are taught that weakness is strength, that delicacy is desirable, and that being a soft metrosexual is more valuable than training the mind, body, and soul," he said on the floor of the House of Representatives. "Social media has weakened us, siphoning our men of their will to fight." And I can pick apart so many things that are wrong with that statement.
Oh, yeah.
That it's baffling to me that this was even put together. But I want to really focus in on the first part, the quote-unquote weakness is strength and delicacy is desirable. Because those were obviously chosen to provoke emotional response. There's no
a dog
reason,
whistle.
Yeah, there's no reason you would choose that wording if you weren't trying to stoke a fire under a certain group. No one has ever said weakness is strength. None. I don't care where you look.
They're antonyms.
Yeah, no one has ever said one equates the other. What we have said, what many people have said,
mm-hmm.
is that strength is not necessarily what you think of with bench pressing 500 pounds.
I was even
honestly,
thinking,
if you can bench press 500 pounds, I want to meet you, but that's a whole different discussion.
So I think, well, yeah. What I was thinking was like I think the term weakness purposely replaced vulnerability, because vulnerability, like you have to have a certain level of strength to be vulnerable with a person. There's also some other things involved with like making sure that you're talking to the right person and you have the right rapport and so forth. But vulnerability takes strength, and I think that in this statement, I think he, like as a political dog whistle or a cultural dog whistle, he's used the word weakness instead of vulnerability.
Yes. And it's because no one in their right mind is going to say they want to be weak.
Right.
It doesn't matter what you're talking about. No, I don't want to be weak.
I think there's a whole lot of people that would say, hey, I would like to be more vulnerable with my best friend, my spouse, my, fill in the blank. And because there is, like, if you are paying attention to being a well-rounded human being, there's a time and a place where you do need to be vulnerable. And I think there's a lot of equating of vulnerability with weakness as well.
There is.
Incorrectly.
Yeah, and especially among older demographics.
Sure.
The thing that I would specifically mention or call out here with regard to the choice of weakness, I wouldn't even equate it to vulnerability in this particular example. I would say there's a certain amount of strength and braveness and courage, etc., wrapped up into being willing to be examined.
Mm-hmm.
If you are not examining yourself in general, how you present yourself, how you behave, how you carry yourself, who you are, what you stand for, what your ideals are, what your values are, if there is no level of self-examination, you're a fucking coward. And it requires a certain amount of bravery to perform that self-evaluation. What it means to be vulnerable is to identify those things within the self and be willing to let other people see those things.
Yeah, it's a sort of a second step to what you're saying there.
Yeah.
Because like self-examination is difficult. I remember, going through a difficult emotional time, and I'll say this for most. I don't know how most of. I would expect that most Americans have difficulty with being uncomfortable and being sad and dealing with that emotion, and so it's really difficult to self-examine because it's very uncomfortable. And so that's why you have people that self-medicate in many different ways, where it could be, the obvious ones are substances, but then there's also like throwing yourself into work or the gym, and all those things are good, but when it's problematic when it becomes too much, and it's a tool that you use to avoid feeling uncomfortable or the pain, which is something that you have to go through to begin to examine yourself.
So interestingly, I think it's been a decade ago. There's no way I would attempt to find this article anymore, but I remember reading about how one of the things that you would not expect for identifying depression in men, especially, would be their activity level or choice of extracurricular activities. That one of the ways men cope with depression is to throw themselves into an activity. Sometimes it's work, like you were mentioning. Sometimes it's running or, whatever physical activity.
Fitness.
Right. And it's not uncommon at all. It's one of those things where, from the outside looking in, we think about someone who is depressed and think about a withdrawal and kind of siloing of the self away from everybody. But it's just as common to see men engage in group behaviors and really throw themselves into a particular hobby as a method of escaping those feelings of depressiveness. It's counterintuitive to an extent, unless you've ever been in a situation where you've done that. And then you start to realize how it's really easy to slip into that mindset, because it's a way of removing or nullifying might be a better word, nullifying the feelings associated with having the time to focus on those depressive thoughts, as opposed to clearing the mind for engaging in activity.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we've talked about it before.
We have.
I think we've talked about it multiple times before. Not to necessarily rehash anything specifically, I've very much found myself in that situation at one point. And so it's an area that I'm more than willing to talk about repeatedly and, really laying it bare for anybody who might benefit from that discussion. So the only reason I mention that is just if you happen to listen to the show and feel like you don't have some outlet, by all means, email us. This is 100% something that I'm more than willing to share directly as well.
Yeah, I remember we both have been through the same sort of life experience at different points in our lives, and we talked about coping, what our coping mechanisms were, healthy and unhealthy, and I just wanted to, the thing about it is like, work is not bad, fitness is not bad, hobbies are not bad, going out with your friends and having a night where you drink a few beers and you feel, get a good buzz, that's not bad either. But it's when you allow any of those things to, and even even like depression and sleeping and eating, and you allow anything in your life that could be good that becomes a coping mechanism to not deal with the problem, or allow yourself to feel the emotions and let those emotions run their course and just be okay with feeling shitty. It becomes problematic. And I think that to bring it back into what we're, the topic is like, if we start teaching our sons and our daughters, this is what it is to be a human. These are the things that are going to happen into your life. There are healthy ways of dealing with it and unhealthy ways of dealing with it. And here's how you deal with it in a healthy way. That is going to make for better humans. It's what's going to allow men to be men and women to be women. And men and women are equal.
I agree. I don't have any counter argument to it. I want to change the way it's described a little bit. It's the willingness and the strength to address turmoil in general, whether it's emotional, whether it's physical, even mental. That is something that is the essence of being human. We have to be able to address things in those spheres in a healthy manner. Doesn't matter whether we're male, female, identifying as anything, doesn't matter. Being human requires being able to address mental issues that arise in a healthy fashion, emotional issues that arise in a healthy fashion, and physical issues that arise in a healthy fashion. And there's a theme here that I've reiterated that I hope you picked up on, which is a healthy fashion, right?
Yes.
And all of that leads us to a point where we have shared experiences and shared problems and shared resolutions that work regardless of these categories that we find ourselves drawn to. The underlying common thread is what we need to focus on, because that's the thing that matters. And that underlying common thread is that we're human. We suffer from the condition known as life, which, spoiler, ends in death. And how we progress from point A to point B, from the emergence into life to the eventual passing into death, depends a lot on how we are able to respond to the mental, emotional, and physical stressors that attack us at any given point in time. Having a healthy response to those things is paramount to being human. Nothing in that overall grouping cares whether you are predominantly macho or masculine or aggressive or feminine or passive or anything else. None of that matters in the grand scheme of dealing with health general quality of life when thinking about the basic existence of humanity. And that's the part that we have to focus on first and foremost.
I had one final thought, and I wanted to add to what you were saying, and that is healthy people, strong people are not always capable of solving these problems on their own. And the sign of a good, healthy person is someone who is willing to seek out external help. There are various means of external help, and sometimes in this country it's difficult to get external help from a professional, but professionals are out there, and seeking professional assistance for any issues that you might be having, to me, is very much a sign of strength.
100% agree. It's a very good point. I hate that I failed to include that. Because one of the things
that's why this is a show of two white guys talking to each
other. One of the things to remember when we talk about being human, we are inherently social creatures.
Yes.
Humanity, as we know it, cannot exist without the presence of social interaction. And I often tend to forget to emphasize that component. So I'm very grateful for remembering to bring that to light, because it's important to remind people you're not alone. I don't care how bad things may feel or seem, or what kind of situation you are in, or how those people around you are reinforcing these concepts of manning up, or hiding it or not showing it. It's all bullshit. You're not alone.
Mm-hmm. Nope.
No matter what anybody says, someone is willing to listen. And I'm not even going to, I will put it on record. I don't care who you are. If you want someone to talk to, I am 100% going to be available. I don't have to know you.
Yeah.
Shoot me a message. Let's talk.
I was also going to say, that made me think of, at this point, we've crossed the line of 8 billion people on this planet.
Yeah.
Not only are you not alone, you are definitely not the worst. Like, your situation is not the worst. It's probably never going to be the worst. It's probably never going to be the best either.
And never going to be the only person experiencing it.
Yes. I think about the idea of, like, there's 8 billion people in the world. Like, on average, how many people have a birthday today? It's a lot. So you're not going through the things that you're going through alone. There are plenty of people who have gone through it before, and there are plenty of people that are going to go through it after you. And if you learn how to, like, I remember getting such good advice from you and some other friends, and, when I was going through a hard time in my life, and it was just, like, comforting to know that other people, loved me, cared about me, and were willing to tell me that they'd been through it too.
And just to add, on top of that, it's not even necessarily a commonality of experience. It's recognition that I may not have been through it, but I don't discredit it. I may not have a frame of reference for understanding it specifically. Like, as far as what you and I are talking about, I do. But like, just the general concept of how we interact with each other, I don't have to have a frame of reference to understand the very specific or exact scenario. I just have to be willing to try to understand that I don't know that specific scenario, but I can try to equate it to something else that I have been through, at least enough to understand, like, the high level emotional state.
Right. It's like, if you've been through it, you can sympathize with somebody, but if you haven't been through it, but you still identify, or
you were so close.
You empathize.
Yes, there you go. I
was
waiting.
No, I was trying to think of how I wanted to describe empathy, but that's what I was getting at. It's like, just because, actually that's a really good thing to mention here. It's like another part of being a good, well-balanced human person, a strong human person, is to be able to be empathetic of those that are around you. You can't know or have been through every situation that everyone else has been through, but that doesn't mean that you can't be empathetic to that person's situation.
Yes. 100% yes. At the end of the day, being able to empathize with your neighbor, or let's just say neighbor. Let's use the blanket term neighbor for anyone that reaches out, because realistically, I don't care whether you're next door or 100 miles away. The general principle is you're my neighbor. Being able to empathize with you, that's the key to being a decent human being.
We have a number of different ways set up for you to get in touch with us to provide feedback, ask questions, or just comment in about something we've discussed.
You can hit us up on Twitter or Instagram at untitled_hosts, or shoot an email over to untitled.hosts@gmail.com.
Or get in touch directly with Jesse at jthart.com, or get in touch with me, John, via telepathy.
If you would like to support our work or are interested in listening to our new after show feed, head over to patreon.com/theUntitledPodcast and take a look at the options we have set up.
Thank you for listening.
We hope you've enjoyed the show.
And we hope to connect with more of you as we continue this journey.
That's a wrap.